Hello and welcome to Focus IR. Delighted today to be joined by Stephen Birrell, the CEO of Echo Energy, accompanied by Christian Yates, the chairman of the company. So warm welcome to you both. Today we're discussing your transformation over the past 6 months, and this is involving exiting legacy oil and gas assets in Argentina and beginning a new chapter, entering Peru. Also a name change on the horizon as well. So we'll get on to that a bit later. But let's get stuck in. We're going to start with Christian today. So how did the opportunity to get into gold and silver mining in Peru, how did it come about?
Well, I think we found ourselves in November 2023 when Stephen took over as CEO and I stepped up as to take over the chair role with a challenging position. And the biggest challenge for us was how could we create value and recover some value, should I say, as well, for shareholders, as well as looking at opportunities where we could, in fairly short order, generate revenues and build reserves, so to strengthen the balance sheet. We didn't have significant funds or dollars to invest or make acquisitions. Our balance sheet wouldn't support that. So we had to look at opportunities that could turn into fairly quick wins for the company and for our shareholders. I think, gold has been on a pretty positive trajectory for some time, and we felt there were significant opportunities in Peru when we were reviewing the opportunities that we saw in the marketplace. And through various connections, we connected with a person called Eric Pegot, who is now our general manager and partner in Peru. And discussions started back in February this year. Stephen visited Peru in March, and that resulted in the formation of a joint venture for Echo in Peru in July 2024.
All right, and let's maybe sort of get a bit technical now then, because there are 2 strands, as I understand it, to the mining strategy in Peru. So there's primary mining and tailings cleaning. Can you maybe just break this down for us and explain it?
Yeah, sure. The advantage of primary mining is that we could do it at an artisanal and small mining level. So the barriers to entry are fairly low. The key for us was to find a concession and then also the right permits so we could commence mining fairly quickly. The capital costs involved in actually commencing primary mining were also relatively low. And through Eric, our general manager in Peru, he had ownership of a concession about 350 miles south of Lima in Arequipa region, where there was known gold reserves, a rich seam of gold, where we had the opportunity to capitalize and take advantage of that. So the primary focus has been where our efforts have really been directed over the last 3 months in commencing mining operations in the south. So that's the primary focus. The advantage of this as well, it has the opportunity to start generating revenues for the company fairly quickly, i.e. by the end of 2024. And that, as I said earlier in my introduction, something that we were looking or seeking to achieve, because that gives us so much more leverage in terms of what we can do, attracting further investment into Echo, but actually also scaling our operations in Peru. The second opportunity we saw was actually further in the north of Lima, in the highland region as well, where there are a lot of tailings deposits from former polymetallic mining operations. And these are posing quite an environmental hazard or disaster for the owners of these deposits. And the owners tend to be family groups. We're negotiating with one family group, for example, that has 3 different families totaling 53 members. And they are being confronted with potential large fines, and they don't have the capital to sort the problem out. So what the tailings is about is actually getting an agreement to reprocess those tailings. As I mentioned earlier, they were largely tailings from polymetallic operations previously, and so gold and silver were not removed from those tailings. Initial tests have been done over the years, so we do know gold is there. We would need to do more testing, but the process is relatively straightforward. He's going in with a digger and taking out those tailings, putting them through a new processing plant, taking out the gold and silver, and then putting the tailings in a new area, which is properly with a proper membrane in accordance with all the local environmental considerations as well. So actually, there is some good that comes out of this mining as well. And it's a fairly low cost entry point as well for us, which is also important. So those are the two major strands. Initially, we're focusing on primary mining, but we're also in parallel looking to secure some large tailing deposits in the north of Peru.
Okay, let's maybe get Stephen involved now then and talk about the Peru portfolio. Where are you in terms of the development of it?
So we're right at the start of our journey developing this portfolio. We've begun mining operations at Tesoro on what we call the Bonanza vein. There are multiple more veins available in that concession, which we can scale up to. So we've started mining at Bonanza. As we scale and increase production, we'll also start mining at another identified vein called Dorada. And so it's a scaling operation on the mining. From the tailings perspective, where we are is we've identified about 5 million tonnes of tailings. We understand the grades that we might expect in those tailings. And what we're doing is moving towards option agreements with each of the owners so that we have the right to further analyse each of the tailings deposits and then move towards recovery of gold and silver. So that's the full journey is going to be mining, developing the first mine, the second mine, the third mine, tailings, scale it, first tailings dump, second tailings deposit, third tailings deposit. And within that journey, we'll also be developing our own gold ore processing plant to ensure that we capture a much higher margin from our gold sales. So we're at the beginning, but we're scaling relatively fast.
All right. And talking of speed, activity is rapidly picking up at the Tesoro gold mine. What's happening there, and when can shareholders expect to start producing cash flow from there?
What's happening at Tesoro, we have a central camp, and that camp services the Bonanza vein, as I talked about. We've got about 40 people working there just now, both on Bonanza and another vein called Morocota, which is owned by a third-party company. And what we're doing is we're preparing the mine to mine. That's technically what we're doing. So we sink the shaft. Now it's about 13 metres. And then we work out the galleries. We're preparing blocks that are 42 metres by 30 metres in depth and length. And then we mine those. So we're actually mining vein material. We're producing vein material as we prepare. And we'd expect to be selling that first vein material within the next few weeks. The logistics dictate that we ship out the material in 30-ton trucks. So once we've got 30 tons, we'll sell our first deposit from the gold mine to the processing plant, and that's a third-party processing plant. So that's kind of what's going on there. And then as we develop the mine, one of the bottlenecks is bringing in good people. We're actively recruiting right now. We need drillers and miners. As we find the right people, we will develop further shifts. So we've got 3 shifts per day of miners preparing and mining the mine, and we'll just keep scaling as we go. And as I said, we would expect to send our first shipment of ore to the plant within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, and you mentioned the people that are working for you there, about 40 or so you mentioned, and obviously you're hunting for more talent as well. Maybe tell us a bit about them, who you've got on the ground already, about their experience.
Well, our mine manager is a chap called Luis Valdivieso, and he's got 22 years in the industry as a geologist and a miner, and now a mine manager for us. He was the chap that identified the richness of the vein that we are exploiting right now, and he's managing the mine. So he sits at the top. Alongside him, we've got a chap called Elvis Zabaleta. Elvis is a bit younger. He's a mining engineer. Both of them are degree qualified in Peru. He's a mining engineer, and he designs the mine. He optimizes performance. Beneath them, we have a driller. The drillers are really important because everything, this is hard rock mining. Everything is blasted with dynamite. And the driller drills out each of the blocks, sets the dynamite, we blow it, and then we move on, typically 1 metre to 2 metres at a time. And then beneath the driller, we've got 4 to 5 miners who are working in shifts to support the driller, blow the ore, recover the ore, sort it. And we've also got a camp mascot called Nala. Nala is a dog that appeared on site and is supporting everybody emotionally.
Oh, you always need a dog. You need a dog.
And then we have 2 very good cooks as well. Feeding our miners is the most important aspect. Don't forget that, Stephen.
You're absolutely right. In fact, Katie, we've been told that the key to retaining your miners is having good cooks. So we've asked and made sure that we've got some very good cooks on site.
I like that. I like your priorities there because it's, you're burning calories doing all of that. I just want to maybe rewind a bit as well. And you kind of alluded to it there in regards to the process. But tell us about Peru and how the mining sector actually works there in terms of the process from mine to the sale of ore.
Within the artisanal and small mining sector, that's ASM for short, the way it works is artisanal or small miners will go out and find a gold concession and find a gold vein. And to formalise them, they'll then apply for a re-info, which is a permit that allows them to mine. They'll also have to have a contract with the owner of the concession, which is separate from the miner of the concession. So you have the owner of a concession. He will authorise an artisanal miner to mine his concession. That artisanal miner will need to be formalised through a re-info process. They'll have permits in place. Those include the re-info, a permit to buy dynamite and explosives, a permit to store it, and then certification to sell their ore. Anti-money laundering regulations require that gold is certified from mine all the way to the refinery. So they need that to be legal. Now, within the artisanal small mining sector, that can take 3 to 6 months to complete, sometimes shorter. And that's how it's done. And the artisanal sector, they are mining about 1 million tons of ore a year in Peru right now. And they're doing it in small groups, small camps, thousands of miners, hundreds of camps.
All right. Let's maybe talk about, so we know we've covered some technicals there. We know that everyone's eating well, which is always a good thing. We know there's a dog in tow. But in terms of where the company's going, where do you see your fortunes, Echo's fortunes, developing in Peru?
I think, Katie, Stephen alluded to earlier that the next sort of focus, and we are looking at this and we potentially have an opportunity, is to build our own processing plant within fairly close distance to our primary mining operations in Tesoro. The reasons for doing that is to capture the full value of the ore that we're mining and the gold that we're producing. And at the moment, our plan is to take the ore that we produced and take it to a tolling plant, but their margin is about 30%. So we're paying away 30% for that to happen. So to have our own plants, which can deal with our own production, which we hope will get up to 40, 50, 60 tons pretty quickly per day, and we could establish a processing plant that can deal with that. It gives us many more options. We become much more attractive to buyers of gold as well. And financing terms for the company become more attractive. So it really helps with the development. It improves our margin, and it gives us further options for financing future growth of the business. So I think that is something we're looking at at the moment very closely. We've identified an opportunity, so that is something in the near term that we want to talk about. Secondly, we've talked about the tailings deposits, and we hope that we'll have further news in the not too distant future about securing a couple of those tailings deposits. But I think there's plenty for us to be doing in Peru. We have a relatively small market cap at the moment. We can see that growing pretty rapidly in line with our production. And that, is an excellent opportunity, we believe, for investors to come on board at this time and join us in the journey. But I think, what I talked about, to scale will require some capital investment. But I think what investors have seen from Stephen and myself is we set very clear targets and hurdles that we have to achieve for growth. And deployment of capital is very clearly identified and controlled in terms of how that is done. So this is all about really building value for investors.
Okay, and you've mentioned it there really in terms of the funding. How will you fund the expansion in Peru, both in terms of expanding production at Tesoro and longer term funding as well at other projects there in the country?
Well, I think obviously we will require further capital to help scale the business. But I think once we start, generating significant revenue and sort of generating significant tonnage from our primary mines, a lot of the growth there will be self-funding as well.
All right. And something we've got to mention before you go, because you are on the brink of changing your name. So it's going to have a Spanish twist, I understand. Nativo Resources, soon to be.
I think we needed to put the past behind us. We've moved, as you said at the outset, Katie, we've divested out of oil and gas in Argentina. We have a small interest there, but, let's be honest, that's not going to create any real value for shareholders. Our focus is entirely on Peru at the moment. And I think the four natural resources, gold is one of them. And with silver, I think that is, I think it's right to reposition the company to reflect the fresh start and renewed focus on natural resources in Peru and South America, Latin America. So, Steve, do you want to add anything to that?
We went through an exercise of saying, well, what are we? What do we want to be? Gold is native. It's certainly found in native form all over the world. So Nativo Resources tips the cap to gold and silver, a new dawn, and the way we plan to grow and build value for our shareholders who have been very patient.
A new dawn. Well, thank you both so much. Thank you very much indeed for that in-depth look at where you're going in Peru. Thank you so much to Stephen Birrell, the CEO of Echo Energy, accompanied today by Christian Yates, the chairman, soon to be Nativo Resources.